The opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Invisible Wounds or Wightman. Please be aware that the content of Fireside Chats with Deborah may contain sensitive subjects such as suicide, grief, violence, PTSD, and other mental health conditions. By discussing these subjects, we will decrease stigma, bring awareness, and hope. If you need support, please reach out to trusted contacts, family, friends, call your doctor, or go to the closest emergency department. Call helplines such as Boots on the Ground at 1-833-677-BOOT. We hope this series helps build self-confidence in you. On today's show, Aasa, helping hands, understanding minds. Fireside Chats with Deborah is sponsored by Leslie Motors of Hairston, Walkerton, and Wingham. Visit lesliemotors.com to learn more.
Leslie Motors Sales Department is open Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. Give us a call at 1-877-357-3460 to book an appointment today.
And by South Bruce Flooring and Bernie McGlynn Lumber Limited, a local company bringing beauty to your home, one board at a time. Started in 1964 by Jerry and Mary McGlynn in Wingham to supply lumber to farms, the company has now grown to serve both commercial and residential customers. In 1983, Bernie purchased the company from his father and still owns and operates it with his wife Doreen and their children Lucas, Sheldon, and Sharina. You can visit them yourself in the South Bruce Flooring showroom north of Mildmay. A great selection of hardwood flooring and lumber sourced from Midwestern Ontario, along with byproducts of sawdust, mulch, and wood chips. For more information, go to southbruceflooring.com or call 519-367-3215.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Fireside Chats. It's my pleasure today to introduce Aasa, who's here to join us, and he's from Bruce County Fire Association CISM team. Hannes, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me, Deborah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. I wonder if you'd take a few minutes and let the audience know a little bit about the team, perhaps maybe how it formed, what the purpose is.
Absolutely.
Something like that.
Bruce County CISM, which is a Critical Incident Stress Management Team, is fire services based. So all the fire departments in Bruce County have a service where if there are critical incidents, and often these may be incidents with deaths or perhaps injuries to firefighters and such, things that are out of the ordinary. Mind you, most fire calls are out of the ordinary, but nevertheless, we provide a service for those fire departments and volunteer firemen to do debriefs and defusings.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying then is that the team is formed, and how does it work? If they're called, they can go to a fire department and provide this diffusing or debriefing? How does that work?
All right, good question. The team has all been trained. It's an international organization. Critical Incident Stress Management.org is a source for information about the training, and we've all been trained. And we have also mental health professionals. When we are called out after a critical incident, we would arrange, preferably within a day or two. Sometimes it's a bit longer, but usually within a day or two, we prefer to travel to the fire department, the station, and there we would call everybody who's attended at scene to join us, and there would do a debrief. And so we usually have 3 to 4 volunteer firemen. It's a peer-to-peer based support group, and the mental health professional is there just to make sure if there's any critical needs, and just to do teaching components of those debriefs.
Okay. So what if what is the message that you try and get? What I hear from different people is that when you attend a critical incident, it can bring up different feelings, and that one of the things that you just try and do is to normalize that, like just to reassure people. Is that right?
That's correct. Often these are normal reactions to abnormal situations, as we like to say. We hope that we would wish we didn't have to attend such events, but they occur. And emergency response, fire services, EMS, police, we have to respond to these events, and we are then subjected to seeing things perhaps we wouldn't want to see, and such things which cause us mental distress at the very least, and can become very traumatic at times.
So, can you give a few examples of how, if somebody attends an incident, how they might act after if they've been impacted by it? Like maybe what a family member might see, or...
Absolutely. There are many ways in which we can recognize that somebody is under distress, and perhaps it is a co-worker at work, perhaps it is a fellow volunteer fireman. Most often it is also people at home, spouses and children, parents may notice that a person is not behaving as they normally behave. And this may include problems or issues with sleeping. Perhaps there are other activities that we normally do that all of a sudden we do not do. So there's a number of indicators which tell us that a person is under distress.
So one of the things that I've heard is that there's this persona around stigma, that firefighters, in this case is the first responders, and it kind of goes across the board for other first responders too, have the thing is that, they're the ones that go on into the scene and face things, so they're strong and powerful. And can you talk a little bit about how difficult you see it for people because of that, the stigma attached for maybe reaching out and asking for help?
Absolutely, excellent question. I think the prevalence of old school thinking of "suck it up, buttercup," I think many of us have heard such an expression. And so the idea along with that is to always kind of swallow up and bury whatever distress and whatever emotions and whatever feelings you might have. And of course, those the buckets, as we refer to often, get full. And the debriefs and stress management and resilience training is to help us to deal with those before the bucket falls apart or overflows and causes our family members perhaps difficulty going to work at all, coming to the forefront. So that's what we're trying to prevent.
Good. Very interesting. So, Hans, what is it that drew you to this? Why did you want to get involved? I mean, obviously, you're going and you're diffusing and debriefing people who have been impacted by traumatic experiences. What's about your personality or your experiences that caused you to have interest in this and a commitment to it? Because obviously you're here, and I hear that you're also, responsible for setting up the training on the team.
All right, yes. Well, first and foremost, this is a peer-to-peer support group, and so first of all, I'm a volunteer fireman in Elmwood, and so I also respond to calls and fires and NVCs and medical calls, and so that's firstmost. And I believe that most of us are helpers, and as I got involved with the fire department, it became clear that they looked for some individuals who might help in different ways, to help the stress that firefighters may feel, the emotions that come along with that. And so I suppose some of us feel better equipped, but I'd like to assure that all of us need some kind of help, and with training we are able to cope and have resilience in the face of challenges. So primarily, hopefully, we're trained, to do that. Hopefully we look after each other. As is often said, I've got your back is a very common phrase, and that's a reassuring phrase that things that happen to us and the normal reactions we have to them are very important.
So, as a member of the CISM team, is there the potential that one or more individuals might need some further assistance other than the diffusing or debriefing? And if so, how do you facilitate that transition?
Very good. Often one of the first procedures we take is a diffusing, and that would happen as soon as the fire trucks arrive back at the station. We would check in with those who has responded. If it seems evident that the critical incident was significant enough, we would then schedule a debrief, as I said, in a day or two, hopefully. And once that has occurred, or even before then, we're looking at each other peer to peer, and most of us are trained to do one-on-one chats and diffusings. And so we often do what we call wellness checks for each other. We check in with each other to make sure that things are going all right. And we can often notice whether we have symptoms, bodily symptoms, perhaps anxiety and such things.
Now, I know that there's some centers out and about that do actually offer treatment, inpatient treatment for first responders. There's Edgewood, there's Homewood, there's a new one that the government actually is building over in Caledon, and there's many more. So do you see that the role in some way of the CISM team for those who have had experiences that lead them to the point that they actually need inpatient, do you see that being transitioned maybe by, I don't know, maybe the mental health worker or as a peer support? Are you able to do that, or do you do that?
Of course, the diffusings, the debriefings, the one-to-ones are there to help us to identify somebody who's struggling.
Okay.
All of these are not counseling, they are not therapy. And so we have mental health professionals to help provide resources. They do not do the therapy themselves, but they're there to help to track what is happening during the debriefs. And so we generally, at the end of our debriefs, we offer information about resources. So if you're feeling any distress or any difficulty, there are a number of resources. 211 is perhaps one of the phone numbers to call for help. There's a number of resources that the Ontario government provides for people in stress, and also that includes emergency service workers.
There's, I know that Boots on the Ground is one of the organizations that is around, and they're available 24/7, and I'm sure that you guys and gals are quite aware of that organization also. And like you said, there's many out there. And I want to congratulate you. I know that you are out there. I know that you're responding to calls, and I know that it's appreciated. You're actually making a positive influence and difference in people's lives. So, let that be known. If anybody's interested in joining the team, how do they get in touch with you? Or, how does that work?
So if there's anybody, a volunteer fireman, an officer, a captain, a chief, whatever they may be, provincial government mandated OGs, that's procedures that they must implement mental health initiatives, and certainly as that requirement, if you're feeling any distress at all, the first stop is perhaps at your fire hall with your chief. There are often benefits packages with your workplace, and so you can access help through that. And there's many other sources that could do. So the first stop, if you feel the need for help or feel the need you want to help, then that would be at your local station, wherever that might be.
And then once again, if I'm a firefighter and I'm listening to you, today on TV,
right, yeah.
And it's like, damn, Lauren, I'm really interested in this, would like some more information, and maybe join the team. who did they call?
So one of the first sources you might look, and we reach out through Facebook. And so Bruce County CISM team has a Facebook page, and there we run some information. You can access some information for that. And certainly in this day and age, searching critical incident stress management, there's many programs, there's many organizations that are providing training in this field. And I certainly encourage anybody who's at all interested or feeling any effects at all to reach out and get some help. There's the stigma is hopefully quickly eroding, and we all feel the stress of the past 2 years pandemic, and that also has added on to what we experience in daily lives. So hopefully most of us, and especially those emergency services, will be free to do that and be willing to do that. Get some help. Turn to counseling. I go to counseling. I get help. We all need to go get help if we think we need it.
Absolutely. Good point. And thank you for your honesty about that, because that in itself will perhaps hit one person that's viewing this and say, well, you know, if he can go to counseling, then so can I. And I can do a disclaimer too. I go to counseling. It's kind of normative, so for me anyhow.
Yeah.
So
hopefully it's becoming less and less unfamiliar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more about what drew you to the CISM. Like, what is your history?
Right. That's it's a long history. I took my initial training in Hamilton with Hamilton Fire Services. And I worked primarily in Hamilton with refugees and with veterans. And acknowledging there, of course, these are veterans from a previous generation. And so you get to see the effects that people have when they've lived with these stressful events and things in their lives that have been traumatic for long periods of time. And that makes you appreciate how that can change people. And so that was an important part of the calling to help people in responding to these sorts of things.
So could you elaborate on that just a little bit more? So you would be speaking and doing interventions with veterans, is that correct?
So in some cases, things were very, very traumatic. Individuals who were conscripted into the Soviet army or the German army, and were, as youth, as 13, 14, 15-year-olds, were required to take part in things that they shouldn't have had to do. And to their dying day, they were affected by these things. And these are long-term effects that they've had to live with. And we don't want people to live with these kinds of effects, and that's why we have CISM teams to help people cope with these, to have the resilience to move through these unusual situations and our normal reactions to them.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, very difficult situations for sure. And the fact that, if, as you say, they carry them for such a long period of time, just absolutely painful and emotional.
It shapes and perhaps some people would say distorts their lives and their reactions to things in their lives, and makes life very difficult.
That's a very good point, and the fact that that with the interventions that you do, the early interventions, that it halts some of the damage and some of the negative impact that people may still have because of the trauma. Very good point. Yeah. So I'm wondering, just as you mentioned that, if you see a difference between, say, a firefighter who is working in an urban situation, a full-time, versus a volunteer.
Right. So in the rural areas, volunteer firemen have quite a different set of experiences than the professional emergency services in cities and urban areas. In rural areas, firefighters often respond to a neighbor, to somebody down the street, a relative, and these are common occurrences. When they get a call out, they already know who lives there, who their children are. They play hockey together. They do activities, and this is of course more stressful for us because we're more invested in the people, and that causes a different level of distress and trauma for the first responders.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing that I'm really amazed about is the fact that you're volunteers. And there's sometimes this persona that's put on, like you said, professional full-time firefighters. And without offending them in any way, what I want to acknowledge is that you are professional firefighters. You are a volunteer, but you are trained. It is, do you not perceive yourself as professionals?
Absolutely. We do regular training, NFD firefighting. Many of them who are trained in Elmwood will go to service in a city, some to Guelph or Toronto, wherever they may go. The same qualifications apply to us as they do to anybody who's a professional firefighter. So the training is all there. We're expected to respond professionally to all events.
Right. And so I guess one of the big things is that a lot of you are employed. And when you go on calls, it's not just impacting, it's impacting your employer. How does that work?
Yes, often the fire calls come out. They may be in the middle of the night. They wake up our spouses, our partners, our families. If it happens at work, provincial legislation requires that employers support volunteer firemen in Ontario. And that's a very important piece for first responders to know that employers are required to support those workers when a call comes in, that they are allowed to leave and respond to an emergency event. So that's a very important component.
Yes, yes. And I think that I know some organizations and some businesses who do employ first responders, and not only do they let them go to respond to a call, but when they come back, that they have some time to actually diffuse at work before they have to go back and maybe sell cars or do whatever their profession is. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The symptoms that we might feel often, we may have actual bodily. Somebody might be shaking from experiencing something, or they may feel outside of themselves, and it takes time to acknowledge what has happened. To acknowledge, again, as we often say, these are normal reactions to abnormal situations, and so we need time to settle back. And some people do that faster, and some people do that slower. But nevertheless, we need a bit of time to reacquaint ourselves to normal life, other than our fire responsibilities.
So at a previous seminar that we had, one of the things that was brought up by, actually it was Doug Sharp and his wife Barb, it was that they actually did some planning around how to respond to Doug when he came home after a call or after a shift. Do you encourage your firefighters to kind of really communicate with their spouse or with their partners, make a plan, so that they know how to respond if Fred comes home and he's been out on a rough call, and you really don't want to talk to him. You're kind of walking on eggshells maybe for a little while.
Yes, that can happen. Absolutely, we encourage that communication. We don't encourage somebody to relay what the content of the events were. That's to help protect spouses and family members from that, but certainly that spouses and family members know that there's been a critical incident of some kind, and that they have a procedure about how to allow a bit of time, a little bit of space. If somebody needs to go exercise a bit to work off the testosterone that levels have been built up, that's encouraged. To make sure people drink water, that they get the rest they need. If sleep is disrupted, then you make allowances for that. And so there's a number of things that communication with your spouse, with your partner, with your family can help facilitate a more normal re-entry back into your life.
Great.
So very good question.
Yeah. No, and it's really great that you're doing that, because it's, you know, it's normal for firefighters to be impacted, and absolutely that it can impact family dynamics. So it's great that it's being identified, and I think it's just starting, and it's it'll take a little time for it to morph into the normalcy. But anyhow, once again, I want to thank you for coming out today and sharing all this information. You do a valuable job, and you're making a positive impact on people's lives. So thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Always willing to help and to help each other.
Invisible Wounds will host events promoting mental wellness to first responders, their families, and civilians. Our upcoming national conference, the Invisible Wounds Conference for First Responders, will be held October 5th and 6th, 2022 at the Prince of Wales Hotel and Spa, Niagara-on-the-Lake. To find out more, please visit our website at invisible-wounds.ca.